I still remember the day I finally paid off all my debt. I felt light. Like I could breathe again. You know that moment when you think, all right, life's about to get easier. Yeah, I had one of those. But then reality tapped me on the shoulder and whispered, hey, you forgot something. And that something was a leased HVAC system, sitting quietly in my house, running up a tab that was bigger than some people's annual salary. Now, when I first got into this lease, I honestly didn't think much about it. I didn't even know you could lease a heating and air system. I mean, I've heard of leasing cars, equipment, maybe even farm machinery. But a furnace and a sea. Turns out, oh yes, it's a thing. A very real, very legal, very painful thing. So here's the math. If I keep this lease for the full 10-year term, the total amount I'll end up paying is over $62,000 for an HVAC system. Not a Tesla. Not a tiny home. Not a backyard pool oasis. Just the box that blows hot and cold air. I had already paid about $15,000 into it. And when I checked the early buyout number, you might want to sit down for this, it was $47,000 to buy out what I still owed. When the total value of the whole contract is $60,000. And the crazy part, when I asked if anyone, literally anyone, could look into this, the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Department said, yep, it's legal. Happens all over the US. Legal doesn't always mean ethical though. Around the time all this started, life threw me another curve. I got diagnosed with cancer, and dealing with the treatment meant I had to put everything else on pause. When I finally came back up for air, I looked at my finances and thought, wait a second, something here smells like fresh cut scam. So I started digging, rereading the contract, calling around, talking to anyone who understood this stuff better than I did. I learned something pretty eye-opening. Almost every lease car's equipment, all of it, has a reasonable early buyout option. Something that reflects the idea that if you pay early, the lender doesn't get all the future interest, so the payoff number should go down. But with this HVAC lease, the buyout was basically the entire remaining payments, as if I was being charged interest all the way to Judgment Day. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. When I talked to financial pros about it, the reaction was pretty much, I've never seen something like this, but we need to check that contract again. Even they felt like something was off. And here's the part that really got under my skin. I started realizing this kind of lease is being pushed in areas with military families, federal employees, people who just want to keep their homes livable. And a lot of these companies, they're marketing directly to them. It feels predatory. Like they're aiming at people who might not have the time, the energy, or the legal knowledge to fight it. After all the conversations, the recommendation I kept hearing was basically, treat this thing like a second mortgage. That's how big the number is. And since my income is around $2,400 a month, the lease is more than half of that. Meaning I should handle it the same way I'd handled paying off a house. Except the interest rate on my actual house is 2.25%, which is basically free money. So refinancing twofold in the HVAC lease wouldn't even make sense. So that left me with the reality. I'd tackle it once I reached the part of my financial plan where you take on the big monsters, the stage where you deal with your home payoff and anything that behaves like a second mortgage. And trust me, this thing definitely behaves like one. I've learned a lot through this whole mess. Mostly that leases, whether it's a car or an HVAC, hide the real cost of borrowing money. If you've ever run the numbers, a lot of leases work out to insane hidden interest rates. I've seen calculations showing effective rates of 14%, 15%, even 17%. And the companies don't have to tell you because technically it's not a loan. But when you look close enough, it sure behaves like one. At the end of the day, this whole experience taught me that shiny monthly payment offers often hide the real cost. Sometimes the cheapest sounding option ends up being the most expensive mistake you ever sign your name on. And if sharing this helps even one person avoid falling into the same trap I did, then at least this nightmare has a purpose.